We're looking at earned secure attachment and authenticity. Earned secure attachment is when we've resolved and healed enough of our childhood attachment issues that we go from being one of these anxious, preoccupied. There's a whole bunch of different ways that people describe this, but we go from an insecure attachment to a secure. And it's earned because we've done it as an adult, not as a child. So some children are really fortunate and are able to feel secure and attached with their parents or the grown-ups in their lives. And those securely attached people tend to have lots of confidence. They don't have any anxiety. They really turn to people for help when they need it and support. They're honest, they're authentic. So that's one of the main kind of attachment styles. Now, most people don't fit into just one. Most people have some elements of the different ones. So anxious, preoccupied is high anxiety and low avoidance. So this would be someone who's clinging to us. When we're not able to let somebody be who they are, or if we're really jealous of somebody and we feel like if they go out with that set of friends and we're not invited, then there must be something wrong with this. We have a lot of anxiety around being included, but we don't run away from it. We really want to be. We want them to be here for us. We want them to be reassuring us. So this is also what I found too, is that sometimes people with that will be always trying to get us to say nice things about us. So I love you. I want you here. They need a lot of reassurance. So dismissive avoidant is somebody who's taken the other way. They've come more into flight. And so they have low anxiety and high avoidance. They don't really care, or that's what they say. That's what we feel. I think I've been in that definitely at times. So it's like, yeah, I'm chill. I don't really care. I don't need people. And we kind of avoid intimate connection. So sometimes we might avoid a lot of social interaction, and other times we might avoid meaningful social interaction. But there's that high avoidance. And then fearful avoidant is high anxiety and high avoidance. So that's somebody who doesn't get really any comfort from being around people, and someone who really wants to be on their own. So this would be a lot of binge watching Netflix, staying at home, social anxiety, not being able to go out. And when we get into these patterns, it can really reinforce the sense of fear that we have in our nervous system. Even though we might be highly avoidant of people, that's not really how our system works. So Stephen Porges talks about, in order to feel safe, we have to be in an absence of threat plus a feeling of connection. So if we don't have that connection, then we're not actually very satisfied and we don't really feel safe. So before we go into the inquiry and the practices, again, just to remind ourselves that we have all these tools. We could do tapping, we could do anything that we can do to stay in touch with our breath and stay connected with ourselves. So the 6-second exhalations are always good because they can help calm our nervous system. You can hold your own hand and kind of savor the warmth. You can notice your feet on the floor. You have your hand on your heart. There's a lot of ways that we could securely attach to ourselves. Keep that in mind as we go through the practice. So this earned secure attachment is for people who didn't have it in a childhood situation. We have it more now. We're able to develop it more now. We're not in delusion about it. We recognize it. We accept it. This is what happened. It affected my childhood for sure. It affected my relationships as I went through. But also that we can look at that. We can look at our relationships now, whether it's friendships, romantic partnerships, work relationships, whatever it is. We can look at that and see how our attachment history might be playing into that. The other thing that I think is interesting about this earned secure attachment, there's a couple things. One is that we can do this partly for ourselves, and it needs to be something that we're working on internally. So many times some kind of difficult memory or emotion comes up and we detach from ourselves. That's inherent in trauma, is that we detach from ourselves. we disconnect from ourselves, we turn against ourselves. All of those things are part of the trauma response. So we can reverse that. Now that we know that, we can start to see. Just then, when she was talking, I completely left and I went back into some memory, or I just kind of went dull. And now I'm catching up, like, oh, what did she say? So we do this we kind of blink in and out all the time. We dissociate a little bit. And sometimes it's quite strong. Sometimes we dissociate and it's really a bigger problem. It's not just that we lose track for a few minutes, it can be a lot more serious. So that's one thing to remember, that we can work our way back to secure attachment. And last week we worked with shame and social anxiety. And I think it really applies here too, because we can't really have deep relationships unless we can be authentic. So the definition we were using last week is from Helen Block Lewis. It's one's own vicarious experience of the other's scorn. So it's how other people see us. And when we're in a relationship with somebody, especially if we're starting to let down those boundaries because we get kind of, I don't know if bored is exactly the right word, but we get dissatisfied with surface relationships. And we really want to be able to connect and be who we are. So in order to do that, we have to make ourselves vulnerable and we have to take risks. And I'm not advocating huge risks. It's better to go little bit, and then we test somebody out and see if they're trustworthy. But most of the work would happen inside. Can we be present? And can we not do the old thing? So if that was shutting down or moving away or looking for reassurance, could we stay more stable in our own system, our own body, our own mind, and then not go into that reflexive kind of either avoiding or moving in for comfort and for security? And can we do that without shaming ourselves? So that's one of the things, is that we have these patterns, these strategies from childhood, and then we look at them as an adult and we go, okay, I can see that's not the best thing for me to do. So we decide in our mind, and we can see it, and we can work within our body too, but we have that compulsion or that pull to follow the old way because that was the only way that we ever got any kind of feeling of attachment. So it's a practice of mindfulness, of noticing what it is that's happening, of resourcing ourselves in other ways, and really staying present that the old way isn't actually going to be satisfying to me. So what could I do to widen my window of tolerance so that I could try something else? So part of the work here is to work with core deficiency beliefs. So if we have that feeling of, I'm a bad person, so this person over here that I'm trying to be a friend to, they're better than I am, and I'm not worthy of being in a close relationship. So that leads us to hiding who we really are. And we also have this equivalency that's not true, where if our parents, especially if we had disorganized attachment, where we had some connection of closeness and some connection of, and some disconnection, then we really start to go, okay, it must be me. It must be my behavior. What am I doing wrong? What's the matter with me? And we don't see as children, and no children see this, that it's actually the parents who set the tone for that. The parents have to be downregulated and stable enough that they can co-regulate with the children. And if that's not happening, then the children, all of us, take that on and think that it must be my fault. And if I show who I really am, if I show up and if I'm authentic, then they're going to turn away. Even though it didn't work that way, that's not why they turned away. It had something to do with them, not us. We internalize that. We begin to believe that through our experiences. So this experience of secure attachment, a lot of people get it through a friend. Lots of people that I work with have a partner who's pretty wonderful, and they're able to securely attach to that person and trust them. They're reliable. And lots of times people do that with a therapist. We can attach and practice basically being securely attached to somebody who's trustworthy. So it's a worthy thing to work on because the rewards are so great, and not necessarily romantic partnerships either. Friendships, somebody at work, a neighbor, somebody that you feel like this seems like a person that maybe I could have a closer connection with. And then we try it out. And as we practice it, we're going to have some experiences of being met and some of not being met. It's good for us to practice that. It helps us to develop the neural networks. And some of the times it's going to work out. And then we're going to have that feeling of warmth and connection with somebody else as well. This slide and the next one are from therapists who work with this. And some of the ways you'll know when you're starting to feel more securely attached to yourself and to other people is that if you're in a partnership, you're not jealous of the other person. People who are secure can open up and say, "This is what's going on for me." They can also see what's going on for you because it's not all about them. Before we're in the position of being a little bit more secure, then and we've talked about this before with the skewed neuroception. So every other interaction we have with someone feels like it's life or death. They have to like us, they have to include us because otherwise it really lands hard on our core deficiency beliefs. So we're not really there for them. So somebody who's empathetic, they're here for us. They care about us and they really want to have a connection with us. They want to work through something. So they're not just kind of trying to get you to take a knee. They want to understand what's going on with you and they'll invite you forward to that. And they also have good boundaries. So somebody who, some kind of, abandonment issues or disorganized attachment as a child isn't going to know how to work with good boundaries. So that might be kind of a shock when you get into a relationship with somebody too, but that's something that we can work with as well. So Brene Brown, who's so good, true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. So that sounds pretty risky for people who don't have the experience of being well met when we do that. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. And I think everybody here can relate to that in a way of if we are presenting ourselves with a certain mask and we're going along with things that seem to be what is acceptable in the social circle we're in, then we always have that sense of we could be found out. And so we can't really relax and be part of the group because if they find out that I don't believe that, or if I'm not like that, or if there's something wrong with me. So again, we're working with our core deficiency beliefs. So then she goes on to talk about this is something we carry in our heart and it's not a head thing. So we might be able to run by all of the things that we do well. And I think this is also a way that, as a child, we might have had a lot of people telling us, good for you, you got good marks, or you're great on the football field, or what a dancer you are. But it's not to do with us. It's not to do with who we are inside. And that's why it feels like it doesn't go so deep. And so the last part of her quote, once we belong thoroughly to ourselves and believe thoroughly in ourselves, true belonging is ours. So if you haven't read her book, Braving the Wilderness, it's really an inspiring kind of collection of ways to look at things and stories. And she's always so honest and authentic herself. And all of her work, I really admire what she does. All right, so let's get to the inquiry part. So if you want to have your camera on or off, however you want to do this, let's look at the structure of belief. So we have our conditioning. If it works for you, and if it doesn't, just do it however it does work for you. So we could put our conditioning over on the left side of our body. So on outside the body on the left, we could just kind of imagine all of our beliefs around this. So when people really get to know me, they turn away. And now that's a belief that's based on experience. So again, it's hard to argue against evidence. I'm not good enough is a belief that formed from our experiences. I don't deserve them. They're better than I am. Once they get to know me, they're not going to like me. And then there's also that belief that I can't count on anyone, so it's better for me to be alone. So that would be the high avoidant attachment style. It's better for me to be alone. I can't trust them. I'm not taking another chance. I'm done with being hurt. So let's take a moment to let ourselves know, what are your beliefs about authenticity? and about attachment as well. Whether you're working with self attachment, attachment to other people, the risk that we take, but it can also be a bold move to really be truthful with ourselves, to go into our body, to be present with ourselves with kindness. Let's sit with that for a moment. What is over there in that conditioned beliefs area? And as you're looking at that, remember to stay present in your own body, feet on the floor, seat on the chair. Notice your breath. What is your conditioning? And anytime something gets too intense, you could always do some tapping on your forehead. Take your attention away from the words or pictures and to the sound and the sensation of the tapping. And notice energetically as well. What does it feel like over there on the left side of your body? There's this, just outside the body, there's this big kind of mess of conditioning. Notice the energy of that. And then go over onto the right side if you're working with this structure. Otherwise, you don't have to go left, right. Just kind of come into presence. So, what is the freedom if you had no conditioning around this? You had no experiences of being rejected if you were securely attached when you were growing up. It's not like you wouldn't have had any pain around relationships, but you don't have any conditioned beliefs. So we're securely attached to ourselves. We love ourselves. We accept ourselves. We're authentic with ourselves and other people. We feel like we belong. And we don't shy away from risk. We don't glom onto people. We don't avoid people. We're just secure. We're just kind of hanging out doing our life. So, what does that feel like if you imagine that empty space or tune into that empty space where there's no conditioned beliefs? And of course, for most of us, there's something over on the left side. There's something about our conditioning that kind of seeps in and it grabs us and kind of prevents us from feeling that freedom. And that's what the inquiries are all about. What is that? So sometimes it's pretty obvious when we read one of those sentences or we bring up something or a memory comes up. You're like, yeah, I don't trust people. They're going to hurt me. I'm done with that. So we might have kind of a, oh, this is how it is. Or it might be just like, well, I really would like to have closer friendships. How could I do that? What is it that's holding me back? What are the unconscious fears and beliefs? I'd like to see them so I could start to work with them. So the reverse inquiry can be a really powerful way to get to know or to invite forward some of those beliefs. So we could use Brene Brown's words and see what comes up. So one of those three phrases, I belong thoroughly to myself. I believe thoroughly in myself, or I know I truly belong. And let yourself either focus on all three or focus in on one of them. And what is the response in your body? Was there a tightening? Was there an energy? Did words pop right in? It's like, no, that's not true. So let's work with this for 5 minutes or so. We'll give ourselves a decent amount of time. So stay connected with your body and breath and say the words of the inquiry. These aren't affirmations, these are words of something we think we don't probably believe. And we want to see what's holding us back. What are the unconscious beliefs, the resistance? And at any point, we could hold our own hand, put our hands on our heart. We could connect with ourselves, especially if we're feeling like we're starting to kind of get lost in something. Could do some tapping or tracing. So we're really looking at, if we were completely free, or if we were completely caught up in conditioning, what's in the middle there? How could we let go of that conditioning? And what is the conditioning? What is it that's holding us back? Why can't I belong to myself? Why can't I believe in myself? And there's always reasons, there's always evidence or experiences. And so from this space of awareness, as though we were free, it's a big space. Then we look at the conditioning. So we have kindness, presence, empathy for ourselves. What is that conditioning? What's holding us back? And then can I be kind and empathetic towards myself as I'm looking at that? And notice if you're aware of your body, your breath, if you're here. Try to stay in this present moment, even if it's a memory coming up in the past. Stay in this moment as you're looking at that. Words, pictures, that's how thoughts come in. Oftentimes we have a response to that in our body. We tighten up somehow, or there's some kind of energy there. So for the next couple of minutes, as we finish the inquiry, stay really present with yourself as you're looking. And then begin to let the inquiry come to a close. Oftentimes, this will stimulate things that we could look at again or longer. What did you learn? What came to your attention that you might not have been thinking about before? And see if you could be aware of the freedom, the space where you could allow that to be as it is. You could allow it in, you could stay attuned to yourself, even if there's a difficult memory here. And then do something to connect physically. You could touch your face, your arms, your legs, put your hand on your heart, hold your hands, notice your breath, and then come back to the group.